The world was never prepared for the silence that COVID-19 would bring. It started in the city of Wuhan, China, late in December 2019. The virus, mysterious, unseen, and deadly, was a spark in the dark, and soon, that spark would ignite a fire that consumed the entire globe. No one knew how far it would spread, or how devastating it would become, until it was too late. By early 2020, the news was dominated by the rising number of infections. First in China, then in Italy, then Spain, the United States, and nearly every country in the world. COVID-19 did not discriminate. It infected the young and the old, the rich and the poor, taking lives with cruel indifference. Hospitals became war zones, filled with people gasping for breath, their faces hidden behind masks. Doctors and nurses struggled to keep up, their eyes haunted by the horror they witnessed each day. Lockdowns were imposed. Streets emptied. Life, as everyone knew it, came to a halt. In the United States, the virus ripped through cities, towns, and communities. By the time vaccines were being developed, millions of lives had already been lost. By the end of 2021, the world had seen over 6 million deaths, with millions more left grappling with the long-term effects of the virus. But for one girl in the heart of the pandemic, the statistics became something much more personal, numbers that turned into ghosts, memories of a family that was no longer there. Her name was Lily. At 17 years old, she had been preparing for her senior year in high school. She had dreams, hopes, college was just around the corner, and she was going to make her family proud. They were a tight-knit family, her and her parents, along with her younger brother, Aiden. Her father worked at a local grocery store, her mother was a nurse, and Aiden was only 12, full of life and always running around with his friends. When the news of the virus first hit, Lily didn't think much of it. It was something happening far away, in another country. But as weeks passed, her mother began coming home later and later, exhausted, her eyes sunken with worry. She would sit quietly at the dinner table, barely touching her food, glancing often at her phone to check the latest updates from the hospital. "We just have to be careful," her mother would say, trying to sound reassuring. "Wear our masks, wash our hands, and we'll be fine." But Lily could see the fear growing in her mother's eyes. They all did. It was the kind of fear that you can't talk about, but everyone can feel, like an invisible thread wrapping tighter and tighter around you. By March, the virus had hit the US hard, and lockdowns were being enforced. Schools closed, grocery stores were emptied of supplies, and the whole world felt like it had paused. But for Lily's family, the real nightmare was only beginning. It started with her father. He had been feeling tired one day, just a mild cough and some fatigue. They didn't think much of it at first, not until his breathing grew labored, and his skin turned a pale shade of blue. Lily remembered watching helplessly as the ambulance came, its sirens wailing through the empty streets, and her father being wheeled away on a stretcher. That was the last time she saw him alive. The call came 2 days later. Her father had died from complications due to COVID-19. He was only 45 years old. Lily couldn't believe it. How could this happen to someone like her father, a strong man who never missed a day of work? It felt impossible. But COVID didn't care. It had taken him, just like it had taken so many others. And then her mother fell ill. Despite all the precautions she had taken at the hospital, despite the countless hours spent sanitizing everything, the virus had found its way into their home. She collapsed one evening, unable to catch her breath, her face flushed with fever. They couldn't take her to the hospital, there were no beds left. Lily could only watch as her mother grew weaker, struggling for air, her once vibrant energy drained from her body. "I'm so sorry, baby," her mother whispered in her final moments, clutching Lily's hand. "I'm so sorry I couldn't protect you." When she passed, Lily was left to care for Aiden. The house felt so quiet without their parents, and Aiden cried every night, asking when things would go back to normal. But normal was gone. Their mother had died at home, a victim of a pandemic that had claimed millions. Lily tried to be strong for her brother, to hold on to the last shred of family they had left, but deep down, she was terrified. She felt like she was drowning, the weight of the loss pressing down on her chest. Then Aiden started coughing. She prayed it was just a cold, something minor, but she knew. She knew from the way his body trembled with fever, from the way he couldn't stop gasping for breath. They rushed to the hospital, hoping for a miracle. But by then, the hospitals were overrun. There were no ventilators, no ICU beds. They couldn't save him. Lily stood in the parking lot of the hospital, staring up at the window of the room where her brother lay. She wasn't allowed inside. She wasn't allowed to hold his hand or say goodbye. He died alone, in a room filled with strangers, and Lily's heart shattered into 1,000 pieces. In a matter of months, she had lost everything. Her father. Her mother. Her little brother. Her home felt like a mausoleum, filled with echoes of laughter that would never return. The photos on the walls, the memories, they haunted her. She was 17 years old and utterly alone, with no one left to call family. She cried until there were no tears left. The world around her continued to move forward, people adjusted to the new normal, but for Lily, the world had stopped. Her friends tried to reach out, but what could they say? How could they possibly understand what it was like to lose everyone? She would sit in her room for hours, staring at the ceiling, wondering why she had been left behind. Why her? Why her family? The loneliness was unbearable, and the silence of a house once filled with love, was suffocating. The days blurred into one another. She didn't know how to go on, or if she even wanted to. The world had taken everything from her, leaving behind only memories and pain. And yet, she kept waking up, kept breathing, because even in the darkest of times, there was no other choice. Life, as cruel as it was, went on. Lily wasn't alone in her loss. Millions around the world had suffered. Families were torn apart, dreams shattered, and the world changed forever. COVID-19 wasn't just a virus. It was a storm that swept through the earth, leaving behind a trail of grief and sorrow that would last for generations. But as Lily sat by her window, watching the world outside slowly come back to life, she made a quiet promise to herself. She would carry on. Not because it was easy, not because the pain would ever go away, but because her family would want her to. Because somewhere in the silence, she could still feel their love. And that love, fragile, broken, and beautiful, was all she had left.